Every day in hospitals around the world, critical patient workflows are left unfinished. The reason is simple geometry. Human practitioners cannot be everywhere at once, and the sheer volume of administrative documentation eventually collapses under its own weight. We are looking at a $450 billion sinkhole of clinical administrative tasks. That is a massive operational surface area primed for artificial intelligence to step in and augment human effort. Yet widespread adoption is stalled. Hospital leadership is consistently making a foundational error. They are looking at consumer-grade AI chatbots and evaluating them as if they were clinical software. Look at the standard chatbot model on the left. Its operational limit is incredibly narrow. It takes a text prompt, searches its internal training weights, and returns an answer. Inside a hospital environment, this architecture falls apart. A chatbot retains no memory of the patient's context. It has no explicit goal state it is trying to reach. Its only internal metric for success is generating text that sounds highly plausible. Relying on that mechanism to execute a patient workflow is operationally dangerous. In medicine, plausible text is exceptionally easy to mistake for clinical truth. To fix this, we have to discard the chatbot entirely. A clinical AI agent operates as a multi-component software system, distinct from a standalone predictive algorithm. Instead of answering a question, an agent receives a specific goal. It formulates a step-by-step plan, it retrieves governed patient data, and it interacts with the hospital system by calling explicitly permitted tools. Most importantly, it operates within strict boundaries. The agent verifies its own work against the patient record and explicitly stops processing the moment the clinical task conditions are met. The output is no longer a generated paragraph of advice. The output is a safe, auditable action taken on behalf of the care team. AI agents are already entering clinical practice. Understanding this exact architectural shift, from question answering to task execution, is now a mandatory professional competency for clinical leadership. To construct a safe clinical AI system, we start with a single language model to explain why it fails. For a 55-year-old male with pulmonary tuberculosis, his data is fed directly into the node, immediately generating a treatment plan. The first critical failure happens immediately. The language model is synthesizing this treatment plan based on the broad internet data it was trained on, completely ignoring the hospital's specific approved clinical guidelines. Second, the model possesses no action boundaries. It has no structural way to distinguish between drafting a casual summary note and attempting to finalize a live prescription in the pharmacy system. Third, the system generates zero audit trail. There is no record of the logical steps it took to arrive at this specific medication dosage. Deploying a bare language model in a hospital is equivalent to trusting an unsupervised medical student who refuses to cite their sources and leaves no record of their actions. To fix the knowledge deficit, we add our first architectural control, Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. This blue node forces the AI to search a specific, approved document corpus and retrieve exact text before it is allowed to reason. This process requires rigid discipline. The RAG corpus cannot be a random web search. It must consist exclusively of version-controlled, institutionally approved documents, like the World Health Organization's national formularies. Running our patient through this sequence, the agent searches the WHO protocol, retrieving the precise weight band table for a 52-kilogram adult. Because the system retrieved a specific document, it can now do something a bare model cannot. It permanently surfaces a clickable citation, routing the clinician directly back to the source text. This introduces a new reality for IT teams. A stale or incorrect document in the database will guarantee a confidently wrong AI output. Document governance is now directly equivalent to patient safety. Our patient's tuberculosis regimen requires calculating renal function and checking for drug interactions. Large language models are text prediction engines. They are inherently unreliable at performing clinical mathematics. We introduce our second fix, connecting 3 new read-only tool nodes, an electronic health record, clinical calculator, and pharmacy API. The central model acts as orchestrator. It routes raw numbers to the clinical calculator, which executes the rigid formula, returning a definitive answer. Every tool attached to the system operates under a rigid contract. It must declare exact permission levels, accept only strictly formatted data, and generate a time-stamped log for every single call it makes. By offloading deterministic work to dedicated software tools, the system transforms from a passive text generator into an active clinical computation engine. It has earned the right to participate in complex patient care. The system can now retrieve evidence and calculate risk, but a massive vulnerability remains, allowing the machine to independently schedule follow-ups or order labs without human oversight. We close this vulnerability with our third architectural fix, a mandatory red human approval gate standing between the AI's proposed plan and the final action state. The interface is deliberately designed with friction. It forces the clinician to review the drafted proposal alongside the cited evidence simultaneously, preventing blind click-throughs and ensuring a human is always pressing approve or override. Whether the clinician approves or cancels the action, the system executes a mandatory post-action sequence. It immediately generates an immutable, tamper-evident audit trail to ensure total medical liability tracking. This entire four-stage architecture forms the clinical agent loop. The system observes the context, decides on a step, retrieves evidence, calls a tool, waits for human approval, and audits the result. Clinical reliability is a property of the interactions between these specific software components, rather than a characteristic inherent to the AI model itself. Scaling this architecture from a single prototype to an enterprise fleet requires moving from technical design to organizational governance. This maps directly onto the AGENTS framework: aim, ground, equip, navigate, test, and safeguard. We must focus heavily on the test layer. A smooth software demonstration on a happy path patient case is completely insufficient for clinical validation. Validation requires rigorous adversarial testing. Clinicians must predefine edge cases, extreme allergies, pregnant patients, or severe renal failure, and intentionally try to break the agent's logic before it ever touches a live hospital server. In clinical AI, the system's average accuracy across 1,000 routine cases is irrelevant. The only metric that matters is its critical error rate during complex, dangerous scenarios. When these deployments fail in the real world, it is typically due to three errors: allowing project scope to creep outward, letting the knowledge base go stale, or granting permissive write access too early. But the most severe organizational failure is building an AI tool without a named clinical champion to actively own the downstream patient risk. The deployment mandate is clear. You start with a narrow, bounded use case. You make the system highly reliable through retrieval and tools. Only then do you incrementally introduce autonomy. Structural guardrails transform a standard language model into professional clinical software, providing functional safety that exceeds any legal disclaimer.